Hey everyone, this is Zach. Today I'm going to walk through a quick example of how you can migrate dynamic inventories from one AAP cluster to another without exporting the hosts and groups. So a quick shout out to a customer I was working with who came to me with this idea because they realized the out of the box process with the export module was inefficient, given that when you have a dynamic inventory and you're exporting the configuration, you really don't care about the host and group configuration because they can be dynamically regenerated. You just need the inventory and then the inventory source config to be exported and imported. Then you can run a sync on the other side and get the exact same information. And when you have a large dynamic inventory, this can actually slow down the process quite a bit of the export because it's going to go through and pull the configuration for every single host and every single group that you dynamically generated. So what I did is, as a temporary workaround, created a module that can be leveraged to do this for you. And then I also created an RFE with Red Hat to ideally get this built into the ansible.controller collection so that that feature would have the option to say, hey, for my dynamic inventories, don't export hosts and groups, so it could be seamlessly integrated in existing export import workflows. But for now, I want to walk through this example of how you could do it and potentially integrate, a quick workaround to get you going for now. So the repository setup, which is linked in the source for this post, is pretty simple. I have a playbook that gives an example of how to use it, and then I'm just doing a local module. Again, this was a temporary workaround. I didn't put it into a collection or anything. So I have it in the library folder next to my playbook, and then I have the module code itself. So how you can leverage this is I've got the full playbook that I use right here actually. And all you have to do is call that module, and you can give it a list of names. So you can say, hey, these are my 5 dynamic inventories that I want to pull just the inventory config from, not the hosts and groups. It relies on the same inventory variables as export does, so controller host, controller OAuth token. I didn't add support for username and password, but if you wanted to modify the module, you could. And then I also think it will fall back to tower host or tower OAuth token for some legacy variable names. But once you have set those 2 environment variables, if you run this and give it a list of names, again, those have to match names that you actually have in your cluster. It will pull those and it will export them to the construct that is used for import. So if you've done that before, we've got the controller inventories list, and you can have a list of configurations. That's the exact same way that the module exports it, and it puts it into this parameter called CAC, representing config as code. So if I register it, I can pull that config as code, and that will be my list of controller inventories, which I can then ideally merge with another list if I have some static inventories, or if all my inventories are dynamic, that's great too. But if I need to, I can merge it and then use that merge list to import into my target controller. So quickly, I'll go ahead and run it just to give you an idea of what it looks like. But for me, let's see, got this saved here, going through my commands, boom. So I'm going to run it, it's going to use it, and it's going to write to an output. So this result here, which is actually available, if you go to the GitHub for the source, you'll be able to see it. But this is what the output looks like. And again, if you're doing config as code, ideally this looks familiar to you, and you avoid the hassle of exporting all the host and group configs that came with these 2 inventories. And then you use the inventory source export as usual, right? Because the inventory source export already works as expected. And given that the source is tied to these inventory names, it will naturally be able to link them up when you do the import, and then you just trigger the sync and you get all your hosts and groups. So I hope you enjoyed watching that. Open to any feedback. And again, the RFE is linked at the bottom of the post, so you can track it if you're interested in this use case for your own environment as well. Thanks for listening.